So thank you, Lara, for joining us on this esteemed panel today. Lovely to have you here, and we look forward to it.
Well, the discussion today is a very important one, right?
World will be somewhere near their menopause. That's not a number, it's a force that menopause stops us. And that, to a great extent, is the discussion today, because there are myths and there are myths about women.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am so glad to see the turnout in this room. I think it's absolutely amazing that today we're here discussing menopause, and we have so many women and men in the audience. So I thank the men also who are here today for showing up. Shelley, very quickly, since we're talking about the dress code, I just realized I was standing backstage before I came in, and there's a wonderful Abbott backdrop which we're going to use later on, and I realized that I totally blended into it. So there was no intentional reason to wear these colors, but I'm glad that I did now in hindsight. Shelley, just to put little things into perspective, why is Lara here today? I'm on a very esteemed panel. I'm sharing it with doctors and, people who've come in here with these very strong statistics. Just to give you a little bit, I know a few of you have been at other events that I've done, but to give you a little bit of a background, I come from a family, there's an inside joke in the Dutta family that we exist to keep the human race alive and produce these really strong, opinionated women. I come from a family where my grandmother is one of 6 sisters, my mother is one of 3 sisters, I'm the youngest of 3 sisters, and both my sisters and I all have only daughters. So, I have been around menopause and menopausal women for a really long time in my life. I was joking with my sister today in the morning. It's her 50th birthday today, and I said, trust World Menopause Day to land on your 50th birthday. But I just, I think I've been very fortunate to have interacted with women who have gone through menopause and women at many different parts of stages in my life ever since I've been a kid. And I've seen how those conversations have changed as well through generations. I remember my grandmother, obviously we were too young, but I don't think she ever spoke about it to anybody. She just went through it because she was told, like childbirth that most women experience, menopause is just something that women have to go through, suck up and deal with it. With my mother, as we grew older, we suddenly realized, oh, that was why mom was the way that she was at that stage in our lives, Because again, it wasn't a conversation that she had with us very freely, but she was a generation that found it very hard to keep it to themselves. They experienced, they went through all the symptoms that took place, and they found it extremely difficult to kind of hide that from their children. And then, of course, I've been with my sisters, and my sisters are 10 and 6 years older than me, and we are so fortunate to have these conversations take place very normally in our home, because there's so many women around. So for someone like me today, who I know that I will go through menopause in a couple of years from now, I have to be honest and say that I know that I have an incredible ecosystem around me. I have an incredible support group, and I can talk about things, and I'm not frightened to, kind of address symptoms or address even emotional changes that I might go through. So it gives me tremendous amount of security and stability in my life to know that I'm not going to be alone to go through that. And that's what I want. I want to have these conversations now around my daughter who's 10, who will know that, like puberty, which is what she's approaching soon, that menopause is also something that's very natural and is a part of life. And I think for the longest time ever, there hasn't been any places that you could go to. There haven't been any, spaces where you could address these issues. And so women ended up struggling with it for such a long time because they just didn't know where to go to for help. So I think it's such an incredible initiative today that big pharma companies, Abbott, people like this wonderful book that's come out. We're going to be revealing it in a little while of time. As Shelley said, some of you have it already, you all have been talking about it, just to normalize conversations. And I think for me, the biggest reason of being here on this stage today is that in my 40s, I am so happy to be an actor. With the advent of the OTT platforms in India, the kind of content that's being made for women is so much more progressive, is so much more relatable today than it ever has been before. You know, I mean, today I'm on screen playing characters that are my age. I'm playing women who are unabashedly ambitious. They're women who are vulnerable. They're women who are manipulative. They're women who are, you know, strong. They're mothers, they're daughters. But it's no longer this warped ideal that was presented to us on screen and through entertainment in the past. You know, you either had to be the long-suffering mother, जो मैं अपने बच्चों के लिए सब कुछ त्याग दूंगी, you know, or you had to be the पतिव्रता पत्नी कि मेरा पति प्रभु है, परमेश्वर है और मैं, you know, I mean, it was these ridiculous ideals where how difficult was it to identify with those women on screen? That if we didn't behave in the way that they behaved, then we weren't the perfect or the ideal woman. You know,
Here, I want to make you hold that thought. The reason I'm saying that is that you're right, we're moving the needle. But perhaps that needle is still scratching the surface, right? And the reason I say that because I love the story of you, your sisters, the entire environment ready, geared up for menopause. This isn't the experience of an average woman.
Certainly
right?
isn't.
So Dr. Rishikesh, if you could add a little bit to the fact that we have actually grown up with these terrible and way too many myths around menopause, which are very much so prevalent. As someone was telling me, you step out of ITC by 1 kilometer and the story changes, right? And then you go down to the suburbs of Bombay and the story changes even more because people are just sort of moving back in time and how they think about these issues, whether or not they even utter the word menopause. So what would you say are the biggest myths around it?
Thanks, Shelley. I mean, thanks for calling me here on this platform. As a president of the federation, it's very heartening that these issues are getting discussed. And as Lara said, that basically our society is transitioning now. You know, it's the women are transitioning. You are now transitioning from just being, mothers and producing kids to being empowered. And that transition is getting reflected in all sorts of ways, including the conversation of not only being pregnant and bearing children, but also having your own maturity, going towards the transition, going towards menopause. All these are other parts of the women that are being now amplified with this new India, the new age that is coming in. So coming to the menopause discussion, obviously people always, the myth was that, okay, when they stop the period, that's it. So it's a physical kind of thing, my periods are stopped. It's not like that. There are a lot of other aspects to it. It's not just stoppage of the periods. You have got, there are something called symptoms or syndrome or manifestations, like you may have other things like hot flushes, night sweats, you may be having emotional disturbances, which are a part and parcel. You may have, women are, there's this myth that, okay, menopause, everything is over. It's not over. You are very much in your, prime of life, So the average age of, for example, in India, the average age of menopause is 46. In the West is around 5 years more. So you're still, in fact, 46, you are in the prime of life. So you have your sexual needs as well. So all these things can be impacted with the menopause, and that is very important. So it is not, again, there is an emotional aspect to it also. You may have become depressed or you may have anxiety. So it's just not a physical manifestation. There has got other aspects to it as well. So all these things, these myths are there, which have to be shattered. Yeah. You need to break those myths.
So I've had the good fortune of being able to read a little bit of this book. And a lot of the stories in here, the women are talking about support groups. They're talking about their tribe. They're talking about women who've come together, bonded by a shared experience. And I think, look, I love the fact that I'm an artist, that I get to create something. A couple of years ago, I don't know how many of you have had the opportunity of watching this, there was a wonderful play that came out called The Vagina Monologues. The whole idea about the vagina monologues was to normalize conversations about vaginas. Every woman is born with one. We call it all sorts of different names. We don't discuss it. We don't talk about it. We pretend it's a part of our body that's hidden in some land very far away. You know, so if we can have something where within the world of creativeness and art, where we can start really powerful movements, really powerful conversations, I think it's time that we did the same around menopause too. You know, and this is why I say, Shelley, that I'm so glad today to be an artist, because I know at the end of the day, art affects life outside. You can be part of that change. You can be, in a very positive way, bring that kind of change that needs to be addressed within society, where people who are celebrities, actors, start also speaking up about their own personal, you know, experiences. They make it personal. They make it normal. If I go through it, you go through it, that bonds us together. That's something that we have, that's a connect right there. And very quickly, if I may take 2 seconds, Shelley, 2 characters that I saw on screen right before the advent of OTT that completely changed my life for me as an actor, looking forward to where my career was going. Because when I had my daughter 10 years ago, I honestly thought that my career was done. You know, there was no OTT, there was no nothing coming out, and where the films were concerned, I was either going to end up playing my heroes' mothers, you know, or I would have to sit at home and take a dignified back seat. 2 roles that were amazing. Ratna Pathak Shah in Lipstick Under My Burqa.
Yeah.
Wonderful, incredible story of a woman in her 60s who liked to read erotic literature, hadn't lost her sex drive, wanted to be this woman who had these sexual desires, but was forced to read it in such, you know, shame and trepidation underneath her sheet. I absolutely loved that character and loved that role. The second one was Neena Gupta in Badhai Ho. Again, how liberating. And once that film was made and out there, suddenly even for society, and I'm not talking about a certain class of society, even for the masses, it became something कि हाँ ऐसे होता है, मेरे साथ भी हुआ था, अभी ठीक है, you know, अब इन्होंने बता दिया कि ऐसे होता है तो ठीक है. There was so much of acceptance. So it's incredible that today we're in this position. I think it's a huge responsibility as well, you know, to be able to impact that change. And it's fantastic. I can't wait to get started.
No, you know, and I think the point that she made, that one of the reasons why these
Forward, right? So we've got the book. We're educated women. We can read these stories. It might empower us. How do we empower other women? How do we empower the women around us? So while I'm listening to these conversations, here are a few thoughts in my mind. If I've read these stories, if something has resonated with me, I think somewhere the good positives about being a very labor-intensive country is the fact that we all have domestic workers working in our houses. Sure. Women who are not educated, women who may not have the ability to read this book, but you've read it. You can talk about these stories with them. You can do that with your domestic stuff. I would love to be able to give out, I'm an entrepreneur as well, I run a company as well. I would love to be able to circulate this book within the entire women and the men in the company. I'd love to be able to give this out as reading material to them. So this is how you take it forward. It's not about just sitting up here saying, let's get this conversation started. It's all very great to hear that today. How do we actually implement it? So that's food
I'll
for
tell you
thought.
how we implement it. Yeah, we take this clip of Lara and get it trending on social. We're all laughing, but look at it. You don't have to be educated to watch a video. And you can get a message from the person who's standing up in pop culture and saying, hey, what? I'm talking menopause. Give it up for Lara, right? Okay, we'll come down to Tejal on exactly this conversation, that there is discomfort, not just in talking about it, but actually menopause isn't really a very pleasant experience, as you said. What are the ways by which women can, one, handle it? And second, is there a way to sort of navigate it perhaps beyond just the emotional piece of it, you know, the solutions?
Sure, thanks, Shelley. So I think the most important step in helping women manage menopause is starting the conversation. We ask them, any woman who walks into my clinic between 45 to 55, I ask them about their periods. Are you having any symptoms? Are you coping with it? How are you coping with it? Do you need any help? So that's where it starts from, because just acknowledging the condition is a start. The second thing is that lifestyle modifications do help to a great extent. So good nutritious food, exercise, and I think this is the first time in a woman's life the children have grown and she has time for self-care and to focus on herself, and I think she really needs to take that opportunity. A lot of psychological support helps a lot. So I send a lot of my women for counseling because it helps them to talk about their issues. The emptiness syndrome is there. She needs a lot of attention at this stage, but the husband has gone off to work, the kids are out of the house, and she really has nobody to talk to. So counseling helps a lot. But Shelley, what I would like to bring out into the room is that yes, lifestyle modifications are great and most women do well. But there is a fraction of women who come into the clinic and they're desperate for something to help them. They've tried everything. They've taken the calcium, they've taken the plant estrogen, they've done the yoga, they've done everything, but they're still struggling. A lot of women do well with small doses of antidepressants for a short period of time because they actually have suicidal thoughts. And it's a very difficult time for some women. In my own family, my own mother-in-law, I had to give her mild antidepressants for about 6 to 12 months because she was struggling. But it's for a short period of time, of course, carefully monitored. In a small fraction of women, the hot flashes are incapacitating. It really impacts their quality of life. So, of course, with careful judgment, with discussion with your healthcare professional, menopausal hormonal therapy in a small amount of women for a short period of time under careful supervision can be life-affirming. It changes their life. And it's hilarious because we have this event today, and just the last 2 months, I've initiated 2 women on menopausal hormonal therapy. The next month, they both bring in their mothers and say, can you help my mother? Because you know what, my mother had early menopause and nobody helped her. Can we do something for her now? And that's the way that ripple effect or the cascade effect happens. These women, because they've received appropriate care, they want it for their mothers, they want it for their sisters, and we hope that their daughters will not even need to ask for it.
That's a great example of
You know, it's time that you tell the stories and they're told with conviction and they're told busting the myths that are around them. You know, so you tell these stories, again, we keep using this word normalizing it, but tell them really. Tell them guttural. Tell them the way that it is. You know, and I love one thing which I'm going to say in this book. While I've been reading the stories, there are a lot of women in here who say that my husband finds it very difficult to understand what I'm going through. Or I find it very hard to speak up about it to my husband, but my son understands it better. You know, and that means, what does that mean? That means I give us a pat on the back as women. We're raising better men. We're raising men that are more empathetic towards women. We're raising wonderful young boys who will find these conversations so much easier to have with their wives, with the women, with their sisters, with the women in their lives. So I think that's incredible. You can see that change already.